Thank you everybody for joining us today for another episode of Building the Empire, hosted by the Commercial Real Estate Group at Georgia State. My name is Peyton Broadus, and I'm currently the Vice President of the Commercial Real Estate Group at Georgia State. I'm one of your co-hosts today, along with Jennifer Cruz.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cruz, and I'm currently the president of the Commercial Real Estate Group here at Georgia State, and super excited about the conversation today.
So we are joined today by James Pitts. And before we get into the questions, I'm going to read a quick bio on James. So James is the founding principal of Greenwood Commercial Real Estate, which is an African-American owned and led corporate real estate services firm that operates in 23 states, serving Fortune 500 and mid-market companies. James has over 27 years of commercial real estate experience with companies such as JLL, Grubb & Ellis, Johnson Controls, and Sheraton Hotels. James has provided strategic planning, master planning, complex transaction negotiations, and transactional services for clients such as Coca-Cola, EY, GM, Wells Fargo, MasterCard, Starwood Capital, Equifax, and more. Additionally, James has sold land and buildings of all different asset classes on behalf of companies, developers, and banks. Some of his previous roles include executive with Sheraton Hotels, head of development at H.J. Russell, and semiconductor engineer with Motorola and manufacturing automation engineer with Monsanto. And James is highly proficient in corporate real estate strategy and complex financial analysis. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Texas A&M, and then he got his MBA in Finance and Strategy from the Kellogg School of Management. So, James, do you want to add anything to that? Did I miss anything?
You got it all. And I was a soccer coach for 13 years, and our team of young kids, African American, Hispanic kids, who couldn't afford to play soccer, when we finally ended up, we were fourth in the state of Georgia and won the biggest tournament in the country at Disney when I retired in 2020. That was one of my career highlights.
Oh wow! What a way to go out! Finish on a high note. That's awesome. So James, let's kind of start from the beginning. Origin story. Where did you grow up, and how did that kind of affect and influence what you wanted to study in college and ultimately your career?
So I grew up in West Texas, Midland, Texas. So Midland, Odessa. If anybody has heard of Friday Night Lights, that's where I grew up. I never watched any of those shows because I was at those football games, and it's out in the oil patch in the middle of nowhere, 6 hours from any major city. And basically, college was my way of getting out of that, out of Midland. And so my father suggested that I study engineering. He said, if you don't like it, you can always go do something else, but you'll always have a job, because we were surrounded by engineers out in West Texas. And so I got a full academic scholarship to Texas A&M, where I studied EE. And then I was actually really good I actually had some basketball and baseball scholarships at other schools. So I walked on the basketball team at Texas A&M as well.
Gotcha. And did you ever consider taking basketball to the next level? Did you want to go work professionally or
a lot of the guys that I played with went to Europe and played, and they were like, dude, you should have gone to Europe and played. And I mean, I played for 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, until I was 40 years old. So I probably should have gone somewhere where I could have gotten paid for it. And I was good enough to get paid for it. I just, but back then your parents said, get out, get a good job, get some benefits, and keep it moving. So I did that. But there's days where I thought, wow, I could have played basketball in Europe.
Right. Well, it seems like you could have done a couple different things. I mean, starting in electrical engineering, ended up in commercial real estate. So what was the engineering side like? What did you like and what did you not like about it?
So I was really good at it. My first job was at Fisher Controls. I automated manufacturing plants using mainframe computers. It was really kind of blow your head up kind of work as far as the complexity. Then I got recruited to Motorola, where I was a semiconductor engineer. And if we have any programmers on here, I used to actually write in machine level code, which is, you manipulated bits. But I was good at it. I won a couple of national awards at it, but I'm more of a people person. And I got tired of being literally in a room in a bunny suit with semiconductors and a 17-foot long machine by myself for 12 hours a day. And so I decided that I needed to do something different. So I was either going to go get a law degree or an MBA, because if you don't do something completely different, you get typecast as an engineer. And I went to Kellogg. I wish I had done the joint JD MBA program, because I actually love leases. I love the legal aspect. And so when I went to business school, best choice I ever made. Just absolutely loved it, and it allowed me to really, hone in on my people skills and the thing. I love people, love relationships. So that had me balance the analytical side of me with the more creative side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And I actually went to a STEM magnet school for my high school career. So like I was very much in the engineering space, and I thought, similarly, like, yeah, engineering is the way to go. Like I'm going to go get a STEM degree. Then I realized, oh, like, I love presenting. I love talking to people. I love working with people, which is what made me kind of, make my transition into the business world and ultimately commercial real estate. But I kind of want to touch on what you just mentioned, going back to school to get an MBA. Could you kind of talk to us a little bit more about what exactly were you involved in during your program? And, do you still keep in contact with everyone that you've met there? Like kind of shed a little bit of light about your experience.
So before I answer that, so the engineering part, that was all about problem solving. So that has become very helpful when it comes to real estate. So real estate is really about solving people's real estate problems. So you got to deal with people, you got to deal with problems. So the engineering piece, I think, gives me a great foundation. And then the business school helps me understand their business issues that are driving their needs around real estate. So I think that's a great combination. So being in business school, back then Kellogg was ranked number one. We were competing with Harvard and Stanford. It was really known as a marketing school and a great teamwork school. So everything was about teamwork, that really vibes with like my soul. And so I was the president of the Black Management Association. I was a president of the Council on Diversity at Kellogg. We did a trip to Africa. I was a student co-leader on that. I had a summer internship with Procter & Gamble, where my product was oil of Olay. And I got to work on the oil of Olay account and do marketing around that. And it was so neat being surrounded by, I think the classes were 350 people per year. And I literally had a rocket scientist. He was a little rocket scientist, was one of my classmates. Another person was a teacher. Another person was a finance minister from Japan. And they were some of the most amazing people. I learned so much from my classmates, which when we were talking, I was talking about, you want to make sure you have some experience that you bring to business school so that you get more out of it versus if you go directly in, because you just can't absorb it unless you've kind of been through some business situations. And I still keep in touch with like a ton of people from business school, have a great network, a relationship. I actually was talking to my roommate from business school yesterday. And so I would have stayed a third year, but I was tired of being broke. I just enjoyed the learning environment that much. Amazing classes, amazing teachers or professors, and amazing learning environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I hear that a lot, that people, come out with a very rich experience. And especially when you go into this MBA programs with kind of like a goal and a vision, you meet people in this program that will help get you to that next step. So kind of on that note, have you had any notable mentors that have played a big role in your transition or in your career overall?
Oh man, I don't know where to start with that, because there's so many people helped me along the way. I had an engineer when I was in high school who, he just really believed in me. He encouraged me, and you come up, we didn't realize that we were poor. We thought we were middle class until I met people who were middle class growing up. We were only family in the street that had 2 cars, I think. So everybody thought we were middle class. And I met this Black engineer, and he just told me what was possible. And so that helped me to get into college, right? So coming out of school, I had some good friends who I didn't know anything about business school. And I had a good friend who went to business school and opened my eyes up to that. And then I was just gonna like, well, I might go to business school. He said, if you're gonna go to the top schools. And he made introductions. He told me how it worked. And so I'd say that he was an inflection point in my life. And then when I think about commercial real estate, Herman Bulls, who's at JLL, who's probably the highest ranking African American at JLL, has been a friend and a mentor for 20 years. And he was a great influence. And just understanding your role in an organization, what Herman said at JLL, he said there's grinders, minders, and finders. He said grinders do the grunt work, minders manage people, and finders find the business and develop relationships. And if you can become a finder, he said you're at the top, you're at the top of the apex. And so he had a very simple model, and it's been very successful for him. And I credit him with a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're able to have some mentors of that stature that you can look up to. And I kind of want to switch now to talk about your real estate career.
Well, let me say something real quick about that. So for all the young people out here listening, you might look at 5 different companies to go work at, and you might say on paper, this is a great company and a great position. But the most important thing there is not how much you get paid, not your job title or where you work, but it's who is you're going to work for, and will they be a champion for you? Because you could have a great job title, you can make a lot of money, but if your manager does not believe in you, does not take you under their wing and nurture you, it's not going to work out. And so I want to be clear on that, is that building relationships with people you work with and your classmates, I mean, it's all about relationships. It's not about how much you know. It's not about your grades. It's about relationships. So I just didn't want to pass over that.
Yeah, so as college students, we hear a lot in the interview process that, yeah, you're interviewing for a company, but you should also take that time to interview the company to make sure it's a good fit for you. So what would you say are some things that people can look out for, when interviewing and when deciding a company to work for, if you don't already have that personal relationship with somebody at the firm?
So quick story aside. So I was a national merit semifinalist, straight A student, 7th in my class. I got to college, and let's just say I forgot all that. I had a ball. Let's just say I partied the first 3 years, so my grades were not great. And even though I was in full academic, and then I turned around and I got my grades together my last year and a half of school, and so I had to basically learn everything I missed the first 3 years of engineering, which was pretty hard. So the thing that I was really good at, and I ended up with a bunch of job offers, was that I researched the heck, and this was pre-internet. So I had to go to the library to research companies. But when I showed up, I had read I knew all about your company, and I had certain questions. I always had a certain amount of questions. So I was always the most prepared interviewer. And so I would get through that, and then I would start to ask the person about that I was interviewing with, were they hiring me? I would ask them about, their experience. And so sometimes it's not what you say in an interview, but it's the questions that you ask and how you listen. And so, and I also had the same experience in business school, where I think the internet was to be, I'm dating myself. It was just coming out in the 90s. So we were able to do a little bit of research back then on Mosaic, nobody remembers that. But, and so I would go through, there was a guy that I was interviewing with, he was with SC Johnson Wax, and he was the most amazing manager. I was going to work for him, and I was going to follow that guy. I didn't care where he worked. I was like, he just was amazing. And it was just something I knew all about the company, and I got those questions out. And then I started asking about the culture of the company. How do they support, new hires? And this guy was hitting all the right notes. I ended up not taking the job because I was driving up for a weekend to stay up there, and it was a blizzard. And coming from Texas, I used to live in Austin, where it's really warm, and I saw 6 cars go in a ditch, and I thought, do I really want to live in Racine, Wisconsin? And so I drove back home, and I called. His name is Jude. Called Jude. I said, Jude, I can't do it, man. I said, if you were anywhere in the South, I don't care what company you're at, I would go work for you. but I just can't do Racine, man. So anyway, that was for me, it was make sure you understand the company. I was asking about people, like I said, could I speak to other people in the company? Can I speak to other new hires and get a sense of how they're being supported? And you guys have the ability through LinkedIn now to have visibility in the companies and to find people that we didn't have back then.
Great stuff. Yeah, for those of you listening that are still recruiting or interviewing, or just in general, James just dropped some gems. So thank you for that, James. But so as you get into your career in commercial real estate, you were in brokerage, then you went over to development for a bit, and you come back to broker, and it seems like brokerage is kind of your thing. So, you mentioned that you're a relationship guy. You like to be around people. So is that what ultimately brought you back to brokerage? And is that your true love in commercial real estate or
Yeah, so brokerage, I fell in love with brokerage because every deal is different. It's a Rubik's Cube of people and finances and problems and that you have to solve. A lot of brokers just focus on one thing, unfortunately, not or maybe fortunately, but I'm very experienced with industrial, office, retail, and land. And I've done stuff all over the country. So I just find it to be fascinating to work through complex real estate deals, development deals. I just it sparks something in my creative side and my problem solving side. So yeah, and I love brokerage. When I found it, I was like, this is it for me.
so you said you have experience in a bunch of different asset classes and dealing with a bunch of different deals. I've actually heard people say that being somewhat of a generalist can be a bad thing and you should really stick to a niche. What do you have to say about that?
So when I say brokerage, I get paid as a broker, but I'm really a strategic real estate advisor. So for me, the transaction is easy. It's all the things that come before a transaction. If you're a broker, if you're just a quote a broker, then you're just you don't want to be an order taker. You don't want to just execute on a deal. It's all the thinking. If you can develop a relationship with a client to let you help them figure out the right real estate solution, the transaction falls out of that. And we say, transactions are the roadkill of strategy. And so for me, it's all the analysis and the other pieces of aligning the real estate project with the client. And so brokers, sometimes they're selling things, they're leasing things. We're on the tenant rep corporate services side. So we're working with clients to say, why should we locate in the city? Where should we be in the city? How much space do we need? What time term of lease do we need? What business terms do we need? There's a whole bunch of work that goes into before we, go out and find space, do a tour, execute, do an LOI, blah, 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 and execute a lease. And so for me, it's just the flavor of whatever the transaction ends up, that's easy. It's figuring out all those other pieces that excites me. So I'm a real estate nerd. So, to me, I don't need to be in a niche because at the end of the day, if you've done enough transactions, they're going to be related in some way.
Mm-hmm. I've actually never heard that kind of explanation of brokerage, and I really like that. And so looking at your LinkedIn, I'm kind of getting the sense that Kellogg Partners turned into Greenwood, or do those have what's the story behind that?
So Kellogg Partners, the guy who invited me in the commercial real estate, and as you guys probably have found out, is that commercial real estate is probably the hardest industry to get into because you can't really truly go to school to be in brokerage. Somebody has to know you. You have to get to know them. So I never really thought about real estate. Like you drive past buildings, it's this huge industry right in front of you. You just don't think about. Didn't know anybody in commercial real estate. And one of my classmates from Kellogg invited me to go work at JLL. And then when we left JLL as partners, we were like, what's the name of the company? Well, let's call it Kellogg Partners. That's where we met. So had that company for about 20 years. And then over COVID, was just sitting there thinking, okay, I've been doing this for 20 years. We're a small shop. My wife is my partner. And I thought, well, we could keep doing this. I'm 55 at the time. So I thought, well, we can either go big or go home, right? So let's start a national company, but we can't name it Kellogg Partners. So let's have a meaning to the name. So we were doing some research on Greenwood, Oklahoma, which is where uh, in 1921, there was a race massacre, if you've heard of that, near Tulsa, Oklahoma, of a Black community called Greenwood. And we're not celebrating the race massacre, but there was a spirit. It was actually one of the richest zip codes in the country, not Black zip codes, but any zip code, because that community had acquired land, built a small city, and they had created businesses. They had real estate, and they were circulating the dollar there. And it was all about collaboration and helping people out. And so we named the company Greenwood CRE in homage to that community and what they had built, subsequently destroyed. And so that was to build to really ingrain into our company like the collaborative in community, collaborative community. And so that's really our DNA. And so so Kellogg went away, but it was kind of, Green was born out of that. And so we've grown rapidly. I think we were 5 offices in April of 2021, and now we're about to be 13.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I kind of want to touch on something that, a lot of students, we kind of start off at big companies and have aspirations to start our own company. So from your experience, you have a wealth of different experiences across various companies such as JLL, Grubb & Ellis, Johnson Controls, and Sheraton Hotels. Could you talk to us about some key lessons that you've learned in your journey that you've been able to then bridge and apply to Greenwood?
So when you're in a big company, you have a defined position. Like you walk in and you are Jennifer Cruz, you're in this group and you have a business card and everybody knows where you are. And you'll realize what you've been in your career for a while, that you have an identity, right? So when you go off to start your own business, suddenly you don't have an email address anymore. Your phone doesn't ring. You have to really create that space, right? And so, but the freedom of that and the fear of that is that it's all made up. So it'll be whatever it is. And there's nobody to look around and say, well, this should be this way or that way. And so when we look inside of Greenwood, we'll say any results that we're getting is an output of what we put into the business. And so some people are afraid of that and some people thrive on that. And so I'd say if you ever want to go start your own business, one, you have to have a lot of relationships, because without relationships, there is no business. Fortunately, with us having a lot of years in the business, we have great relationships. And so that comes from keeping your word, being interested in other people, delivering value to people. Kellogg Partners, we never advertised. Everything was word of mouth because people said, you always look out for the client. So you have to have a great reputation. And so, you could be at a job working, but your reputation is really your reputation and your relationships. You got to have that. If people know you as a person that they can count on, when you say you're going to do something, deliver it. And you got to have that at work too. You don't want to be that person. You got to add value. You got to show up. As we say in Texas, you got to show up and you got to show out.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of reminds me of an earlier episode we had with Mark Toro. He told us who will do what by when. So that definitely relates to what you just said. And yeah, relationships are definitely key. We always emphasize that to our club, and it could be something that, we're in college. So if we kind of hone in on what networking strategies work for us in a risk-free environment, when we go out into our job, we can, then build onto those networking strategies and, cultivate those relationships.
Well,
but
and let me add this too. If you're accountable for something, then there's no excuses. Either deliver it or say, I can't deliver it. And I'm going to make a new promise to you when I can deliver it, or I just can't do it. And what people don't realize is that people are watching you all the time at work. And if someone gives you work and you don't deliver, or you give it back or whatever, people notice that. And so you want to have a great reputation for delivering on what you promise, that people can count on you and that they can trust you. They have to like you and they have to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not telling you to be different than who you are. Be yourself. I'll always tell you be yourself. But, if you're a difficult person, who wants to work with a difficult person anyway, right?
Yeah, and that's something we can also ingrain in our personal brand. I know for me, I have top 3 values I always try to deliver, and one of them is delivering excellence. So every day, I always think to myself, okay, this is part of my brand. This is what I want to be known for. So I always tell people, just start thinking of it like as your identity and work towards that. And it kind of keeps you accountable along the way.
It matters. And if you look at our tagline for Greenwood, it says powered by excellence. And
Wow.
so we don't have the ability as a small entrepreneurial diverse firm to just show up and just turn in just, like the minimum. You can't just give the minimum. So we have to show up and we have to give the best. And it has to be noticeably better for us to be successful, because we're competing against big firms and we're starting to win some of that business.
Yeah, I love that. Especially as a Latina, like I'm just like, yay, go Greenwood. But you mentioned when you started out this company, it was go big or go home, and you wanted to build teams across the country. What types of challenges did you encounter while attempting to do that?
Ooh, man, that's a great question. So with regards to that, it's all about mindset. And I'm a digress really quick to my soccer team. So, and this is kind of a parable. So on my soccer team, we had amazing athletes, but we created a culture of being unselfish and working together. And so sometimes you get great athletes on a team and they're all about me, 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 I'm going to score. So typically when you watch youth soccer, there's 3 or 4 passes and then somebody shoots. We were making we were making 20 to 25 passes before we shot. So we would outscore teams 4-1. I had 17-year-old boys, and we played 6 college teams and we won 4 of those games and tied 2. So we were beating 20-year-old folks, guys your age, we were beating them with 17-year-old boys. And so with Greenwood, sometimes in the brokerage community, and you'll find this out, Peyton, you have sharks. It's like, what's in it for me? I'm not, it's all about me. It's not about you. And so finding the right mindset to bring people on where they're collaborative and community minded, and to be frank, family minded. And my soccer team felt like a family. We're building the same thing at Greenwood, because everybody has to care about the other person. We all have to help each other. And it can't be, well, I helped you, so I need to get a piece of this and a piece of that. And I'm keeping score on everything. So when it comes to building a team, we're very specific about who we bring on to Greenwood, because I used to have kids that come on my soccer team, great athletes, but they're yelling at the other player. They're selfish. They don't pass the ball. And that stuff becomes contagious. And I'd say, you got to go, man. You're a great athlete, but you're not a great teammate. You got to go. And so at Greenwood, we're not going to grow willy-nilly and hire a bunch of brokers. We're going to hire great commercial real estate advisors that are team oriented.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about teamwork and working together. And I think that's something we see even with our student organization, is that we're a really strong team. So we might encounter challenges, but we know that, as a team, we're going to conquer through it and come out even better. So I think this collaborative model is amazing. And so I actually saw online the mission statement of Greenwood is to disrupt the commercial real estate industry with a new collaborative model, focus on helping clients be more successful and profitable through informed real estate decisions. Could you talk to us a little bit more on how this looks like on a day-to-day basis?
Wow. So, man, you did your homework. I like that. So when we talk about being disruptive, it's, our model is disruptive in and of itself. We bring on senior folks. We do a lot of real estate consulting. There's a lot of work that gets done before transactions. The transactions just kind of show up. And so we're, we think about it differently. Like I might be supporting a project in Michigan right now. Actually, I'm supporting a project in Miami, and we have somebody in Philly supporting something in Atlanta. And so brokerage typically is not set up that way. So we had our annual meeting here in February, and one person said, I've never been in a room where people were so open and collaborative in brokerage, in commercial real estate. Another person said, I've been to meetings before, but I never felt like I was included. And I feel like I'm included. And so we are working with excellence. We're thinking outside the box. And if you can get your attention on the client versus on, well, how much does everybody make? Then you have an amazing model because the clients see the difference. And so that's what we're building.
I love that. And kind of on that note, the theme I've heard across Greenwood is, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And especially in an industry like commercial real estate, where, it's still not diverse quite yet, you guys are truly making strides in the industry. And I know that's very inspirational for me as, a woman of color going into the industry. So how do you incorporate exactly these diversity metrics into the company?
So for some companies, they have to actually have a program. I actually started the African American Employee Resource Group at JLL, which was the model for the LGBTQ and the women, because back then JLL was struggling with, we could recruit people from Morehouse and Spelman and Clark, but we couldn't keep them. So for us, it's not a program. I mean, if you were at our meeting, you have younger, older, Asian, Black, Latina, white, it was all there. And what was there was really sharp people that very thoughtful. And so to us, that's, we want our company to be as diverse, or the real estate industry to be as diverse as the world we live in. And so it's not even a program for us. We don't have to incorporate metrics. By our very nature, that's how we show up. And we don't have to even try at it, because that's just, we arrive that way versus, oh, that's something to get to.
Safe to say that you guys are crushing it. Greenwood is doing great. So I want to ask, what do you foresee for the future of Greenwood?
Well, we continue to grow. We are, just kind of like honing our internal platform so that we can deliver, better and better results for our clients. We're getting great reception from that. We are winning more and more clients every day. And then we just have to figure out how we bring in the next generation, because when you think about it, we're not looking at this as, oh, well, we're going to make a ton of money, which would be nice, but how do we create a sustainable company that when the guys like me, the senior folks, we retire, there's the next generation takes it over and runs that company. And then how do you keep the culture of that company intact, where, people want to come work there because it's such a great environment to work in, and it's such interesting work. And so that's what we're building. We're building the tools around that, and we're building the culture around that. And, we don't see ourselves becoming Cushman or JLL or CB, but if we can be small, family-like, incredibly profitable, and then sustainable, that's a legacy, that we're all interested in leaving.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Well, I think, based on everything that you've said today, it seems like you guys are on the right track of making that happen. So I know, me and Jennifer and the rest of the commercial real estate group will be rooting for you guys. And I'm curious to know, is there, throughout your career, you've proven to be very successful. Are there any notable mistakes that stand out that you made in your career that served as a, great learning opportunity?
Oh man, a mistake that I made, and I probably have so many I can't think of them. Well, here's the thing. So that's a good thing to say, because don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? Like, you can't learn unless you make a mistake. If we're not making any mistakes, we're not being bold enough, we're not being, bad enough. And I'm trying to think of a mistake I made. I did go to a company once where talks about relationships. So the president of this company, it was Motorola, really he heard me speak at I had a engineering high school engineering group that I was running, and I blew the program up 4 times, and we were getting a lot of notoriety in Austin. And the president heard me speak at this banquet, so he wanted me to come work at Motorola. And I interviewed all of these engineering managers, but I didn't interview with the woman that was going to be my manager. She was gone that day. And I said, well, hey, before you guys make me an offer, I should probably meet, with my manager. They said, no, no, no. Everybody loved you. President loves you. Come on in. So I leave my job. I go there to work. I get there. She interviews me as if I don't have the job. And I stopped her and I said, time out. Do I have this job? Because I left my other job and you're talking to me like I don't really have this job. And then she said, well, I wish they had let me interview you before they put you on my team. Let's just say we did not have the best relationship for about 2 years. And that was a huge mistake on my part, was not to meet the person I was going to work with. I ended up with a manager that when I got to him, he said, hey man, you're my best worker. He said, she couldn't stand you. He said, I don't understand. When I left to go to business school, he actually cried. And last thing, people don't remember how you came into a company, but they certainly remember how you leave. So when I left that job to go to business school, I gave them 60 days notice. Before I gave them notice, I had two 4-inch thick notebooks with all of my projects, all of my coding and all of my everything. I laid out everything I was working on, where it was. And I said, guys, I'm going to business school. I will train an engineer to take over my projects. And so my manager, that's why he started crying. He said, hey man, I've never seen anybody leave. His boss above him called me. I didn't have a good relationship with that person because the first manager didn't like me. He calls me and he says, hey man, I apologize for everything that we didn't have a good relationship. She said that, bad things about you. Russ loves you. And he said, I've never seen anybody leave with such class. He said, if you ever want another job, no matter where I am in the world, call me. You got a job. And so whenever I've left a job, I've always given plenty of notice. I've never left any. And then they called me when I was at business school and I would walk them through my projects. So it matters how you leave jobs. But I'd say that was probably my biggest career mistake. And then I make mistakes all day. I make mistakes on deals. I make mistakes in life, and then the trick is not to take them personally, but just to learn from them and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Well, it even seems like in a tough situation, you're still, go the extra mile and do what's in your control. I feel like that's really important, is to, handle what's in your control. The things that are out of your control, you can't get too caught up about. But James, you've been dropping gems this whole podcast. We really appreciate it. And as we're kind of wrapping up, just one final question. So, most of our listeners, they are college students and young professionals early in their career. What are 3 pieces of advice that you would give someone in our position?
Oh man, focus on building relationships. And when I say building relationships, sometimes people only show up when they want something, right? There's no relationship there, and they just show up and ask for things. So get to know people, help other people out, keep your word, operate with excellence, and I don't know, and care about other folks. It's important that you do that. And sometimes, like what I found is that if you care about other people and you look out for other people, things will come your way. And not that you're doing it for that. It just comes around. People say, well, I get phone calls every once in a while. I say, where'd you get my number? Man, you helped out so and so 3 years ago, something completely unrelated. And they said that you were just, you have integrity, you're a great person. You just don't know. And so really pay attention to building relationships, staying in touch with people, offering value to people, and keep your word.
I think something that kind of sums up everything that you just said is, what you give is what you get. So, our viewers will be able to take away a ton from our conversation that we had today. So thank you. It really seems like everything you touch kind of turns to gold, from basketball, real estate, coaching soccer. So, thank you. I'm glad we got to cover some good topics like the importance of mentorship, going big or going home, how relationships are absolutely key. So we appreciate your time and insight. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to today's episode of Building the Empire. And we will see you in the next one. James, is there anything you'd like to say before we hop off?
To your last point, Peyton, a good friend and mentor of mine once told me, he said, if you're not getting the results that you want, it's a function of the strength of your relationships. If you're not getting what you need at work or in business, it's a function of the strength of your relationships. You either have a weak relationship or you don't have the right relationship with the right person. And that just kind of, because you think, well, if I work hard and I'm smart, then everything should work out. And he said, nope, it's a function of your relationships. So really pay attention to your relationships, nurture those, take care of those. And I spent the last weekend with some guys that I grew up with in Texas, and they are ride or dies. We've been buddies for 50 years or 45, 50 years. And those are the things that you cherish as you get older. You realize that the most important thing is your relationships. It's not your accolades, it's not your wealth, it's your relationships.
It's not about what you know, it's about who you know, right?
Yep. Awesome.